What's going on, Web Worker Daily? I'm Alex Hillman, the co-founder of IndyHall, or Independence Hall, that's with a TS, not a CE, which is a co-working space here in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And Web Worker Daily asked me to answer some questions for you about our co-working space and where it came from and how we operate and hopefully be able to provide some insight into how a co-working space runs, what are the things that makes IndyHall kind of unique, and possibly some insight into how you might get your own co-working space off the ground. So we're going to get started real quick and easy and give you a little bit of background on how IndyHall even came to be. It started towards the middle of 2006 when I found out about the pre-existing movement of co-working. And while a lot of you have only started hearing about it so recently, with Web Worker Daily covering it a whole lot, and it's been last year it's found its way into major publications like the New York Times and things like that. It's been around for the better part of almost 3 years now, and it started with a guy named Brad Newberg, who is an independent contractor, consultant kind of guy, is a technologist, a JavaScript and otherwise a web developer, based in San Francisco. And Brad realized that he was bouncing back and forth between wanting to be an independent consultant but also having an office to go into and having some people to interact with, and sort of came up with the idea of, well, what if I got the best of both worlds and set up a place where people could get out of their house but still be independent, but be alongside other independent people. And the notion of co-working and the term co-working was born there. I went through a number of iterations. The Hat Factory, also in San Francisco, Citizen Space in San Francisco were two of the earliest incarnations that kind of springboarded off of Brad, and it was actually the co-founders of Citizen Space, Chris Messina and Tara Hunt, that introduced me to the concept of co-working in that summer of 2006. And as a web developer myself, I realized that, and I was not just a web developer, but I just about ready to leave my job at that point. I said, this could be a good way for me to go out on my own and still be around other people. So there was a long amount of time that was spent talking about co-working in Philadelphia and what it could mean. And somewhere along that path, I actually almost left Philadelphia to go to Mountain View and take a job. But when the job fell through, it was an opportunity for me to reflect and go, what was I leaving Philadelphia for in the first place? And this is sort of the part of the message for those of you who are trying to be entrepreneurial or maybe techie or start a business that you think you got to move to the Valley to do. And quite frankly, what I realized is I didn't. The job was good, the money could have been good, but it really came down to having a region that had other people doing the same sorts of activities that I was, and being able to work together and collaborate and celebrate each other's successes, learn from each other's failures, and kind of having that community is what was missing. So looking at co-working and sort of the community aspect of co-working, I realized that maybe that was the sort of the far off vision that we needed to get that here in Philadelphia. So sort of set out on this warpath to kind of track down all the activities, see what was already going on in Philly, and talk to other people about co-working and see if they thought it made sense too. And overall, success, and people were interested in the idea, almost all positive feedback initially. And then at some point, I was right around it was actually right before South by Southwest. So it was like late February 2007. I got an email, sideline from one of the lists that I was emailing, from a guy who ended up being my business partner just a couple of months later, Jeff DeMasi. And Jeff had some very extensive background in everything from education to he had founded his civic association in his neighborhood. Very civically minded, community minded guy, but he also had kind of this punk rock theme to him, having grown up in the Jersey punk rock scene. So we jived and had similar visions for making Philadelphia a better place to do the things that we wanted to do and be successful doing the things that we loved. And then I went to South by Southwest. And I think South by Southwest, right after meeting Jeff, was one of the biggest catalysts to IndyHall becoming what it's been, because I went and had a great time. It was my first time in Austin, my first time to this massive conference. It might have been one of my first conferences ever. And I realized that there were tons of people from lots of cities besides Silicon Valley doing amazing things. But what I didn't see was a lot of people from Philadelphia. And I went, that's weird, because I know there's people in Philadelphia doing cool things. I know, I've been talking to them for the last 6 months. So why aren't we representing as a collective? Why aren't we representing as a community? And I left South by Southwest with a mission to come back to South by Southwest in 2008 and represent Philadelphia. I wanted Philadelphia to be on the map, and that sort of underlying mission, which now we like oftentimes forget a lot, was we really wanted to put Philly on the map um, as like a core purpose to creating IndyHall. Grew from that. So fast forward several months of active community building. That group that went to South by Southwest. Sorry, back up. So active community building, we were doing our versions of Jelly. So if you're not familiar with Jelly, I know it's been mentioned here on Webworker Daily, I believe anyway, but the idea is that you can co-work without needing a permanent office or a co-working facility or a co-working space. You can go anywhere that's got free Wi-Fi and it won't kick you out if you and a bunch of friends hang out for the day. So we were doing that. We called them cream cheese sessions because Philadelphia doesn't make jelly, they make cream cheese, and we were trying to brand everything to Philadelphia. So we were doing those for several months and got to the point where our attendance was good and people seemed to want to do it more often. So we simply asked that community that had been growing along the way of us talking about this, are you interested in co-working sort of again permanent basis? Do we want a permanent home for this sort of activity? And the answer was a resounding yes. And so I went a step further and said, do you do you want to pay for it? That's really the hardest barrier, right? And a lot of people said, yeah, I would even pay for it. And so we sort of looked into our own past histories. Jeff looked into the arts collectives that he had helped found, and I actually looked into some of my experience in Greek life and looked at membership structures and sort of what happens when you've got a physical space attached to a membership organization, and at the same time sort of measured the value of what we wanted to provide. And what we were providing wasn't a fancy office. We were looking to create a pretty bare bones office where it's got desks and chairs and power and internet, because that's what we really needed. If we could work in a cafe, we wanted it to be better suited than a cafe, but it didn't need to be like totally decked out. We didn't need to spend hundreds of thousands of dollars to fit out an office to be functional for us. So we pressed on and we found a space at what is now the space we've been in for the last year and a half, a little over a year and a half now, at 32 Strawberry Street in Philadelphia, which, if you're familiar with Philadelphia, is in Old City. It's a pretty hip neighborhood. There's lots of bars and restaurants. It's a great place to bring clients and entertain. It's a great place to go out after work. It's easy to get to. It's sort of convergent from public transit as well as all the major highways. So we sort of lucked out and got a really great spot. Over the last year and a half, we've been evolving. But basically, what the entire process boils down to was, we wanted to make Philadelphia a better place for us, being me and Jeff. We wanted to be more successful doing the things that we were doing, continue to enjoy them, to be able to stay in Philadelphia, make it a hub for innovation, and by developing a community that shared that vision. We've recorded a bunch of other videos too, but we talked about the value of having a community that's aligned. That's really what we were creating, was a community of people that were aligned towards the same vision, and from there it was just a matter of channeling them and figuring out what they needed and figuring out ways to provide that. And that was the creative part. So that's sort of the 8.5-minute introduction to how IndyHall came to be. What are our plans for the future? So we have three things that are worth mentioning. Number one is we recently held a membership drive because we've been bursting at the seams since the beginning of the year. We've got 24 desks packed into a space that shouldn't hold 24 desks. This place has been, we've got desks in every corner that we can fit them because people want to be here, which is a great problem to have, but it's still a problem. Our waiting list was getting too long, so we're actually going to be moving IndyHall into a new space in the same neighborhood that little more than doubles our available square footage, like 2.5 times, and provides us with more conference rooms, a slightly better layout. Basically, we get to evolve the physical layout and the amenities, which is really exciting. We love the office that we've been in. This place is home. but we sometimes joke that it's the Millennium Falcon of offices. Things are bolted together because we've done everything on the fly. But now we kind of get to take a step back and go, okay, we learned a bunch of lessons, and we're really excited to do version 2.0 of the IndyHall office really right and really well, and make it very exciting. At the same time, not too officey, because remember, we're trying to change the perception of what the office is. So that's exciting future development number one, and that's super future. That's the end of this month. If all goes as planned, please pray for us. We're moving into the new space with our new membership from the membership drive on May 1st. So if you're in Philadelphia or want to come to Philadelphia for May 1st, we're going to be throwing a big party, and you're welcome to come check out the new office, and we're really excited about that growth. So exciting development number two. We've been working on a project called IndyHall Labs since the beginning of the year, actually more towards the second half of last year. But it's really only started to crystallize in the last 4 months or so. And IndyHall Labs is basically what happens when you take an incubator and you flip it on its head. And just like with IndyHall, we took an office and flipped it on its head and made it community first. Labs is sort of our experiment to see what happens when you've got a community of those diverse people collaborating and cross-pollinating, and you give them opportunities to build things that they can then sell. And it's sort of the collective version of an incubator, but the idea is that instead of incubating products and services, we're incubating our members, we're incubating people. And instead of seeing how to make a business grow, we're seeing how to make an individual grow by giving them opportunities to build a business for themselves and develop a passive income stream. So the idea is that if you've got a room full of smart, interesting, creative people who don't have to worry about where the next paycheck is coming from, very, very interesting scenario to be in as far as real problem solving goes. And the desire to build products is something that a lot of our members had. So we sort of looked at the product development process and went, where are the barriers to entry, and what sorts of things can be streamlined, and how do we remove the excuses? So we're basically building, and mind you, IndyHall Labs is a separate business from IndyHall, but still something to provide value for the members of IndyHall. So Jason Allen, who's one of our full-time members for about a year now, and he and I kind of partnered together to form IndyHall Labs. And the labs concept does everything from providing sort of a vetting process to make sure that the product that you want to build is something that can actually be sold. And then helping people gather around an idea. And we've sort of seen it happen enough times that we know what sorts of things need to be done. And one of the biggest things is something simply it's intrinsic to co-working, and the fact that that openness is such an important core value. And when you've got a community that trusts each other, they're more open with their ideas. And by being more open with your ideas evolve and they get better every time you get a chance to share them. So every time someone puts out an idea into the room, it gets better. And then people start kind of crystallizing around the ideas, and eventually that set of people crystallizing around it has the opportunity to become a team. So without getting too far in depth into the inner workings of IndyHall Labs, that's a really exciting new development. You can check out a little bit more about it and some of the products that we've developed in it at labs.indyhall.org, as well as some of the products that have been developed leading up to and sort of what helped form the idea for Labs. And the third idea, which is also really exciting, when you've got a room full of smart, interesting, creative people that are really good at whatever it is that they do, is something that we've unofficially dubbed IndyHall U, or IndyHall University. And the idea is that we've got, over the last year and a half, we've run a number of workshops and seminars and hackfests, and we host a lot of user groups, and there's a lot of peer education. You're kind of pressed to not learn something while hanging out at IndyHall. But so we want to sort of take that and capture it. So one of our user groups, which is Cocoa Heads, as a Mac, a national and possibly international Mac development group, started developing a curriculum to sort of parallel their user group meetings. And I said, well, it would be kind of cool if you guys develop a curriculum, and then we sort of look at that curriculum and say, are there things that we can do to help that happen faster and easier? Kind of like the labs idea. And then I said, well, what if we've got more than one curriculum to work with? And so we started saying, all right, well, we've already run design workshops. You want to come in and teach. We've got some guys here that are like Johnny Bellata is really good at Illustrator, and Dave Martirana is really good at Django, and Alexis Siemens is really good at copywriting. And all these people want to want to teach the thing that they're really good at and really passionate about. So if we create an opportunity for them to take a curriculum and sort of plug it in, and much like a university provides infrastructure for its professors and saying, now you don't have to worry about course registration, now you don't have to worry about billing your students, now you don't have to worry about marketing your class so that people know that it's available. These are the sorts of things that we can provide, as well as physical space and amenities to run the class. And now you've got an opportunity for a huge community to come in and peer educate one another, and people to actually learn new skills and better themselves and further their careers. In our down economy, you lose your job, or even if you haven't lost your job, you're still looking to make sure that you're the strongest worker you can be, and continuing education is a really important component to that. So we're trying to kind of harness the fact that we've got a bunch of very talented, smart, motivated people that are capable of teaching their craft to other people who want to learn more about that craft. So IndyHall U, kind of like Labs in the fact that it's very much in beta, and we mean that in every respect of the term. We're figuring it out as we go, which is much like IndyHall, we're bootstrapping from the beginning. We're looking at other existing models, things like Unclasses and School of Everything, which are both really exciting models. We're going to take our own spin and look at what's already being done and go, how does what IndyHall provides as a community, how can we make that model better? So those are some of the really exciting pieces for the future of IndyHall and the IndyHall community.